Listen closely. Before the deserts of Iran whispered with the wind of forgotten cities, before marble palaces crumbled under time, before kings carved their glory into stone, there was a land where destiny was not written by swords but by endurance. A land surrounded by mountains, deserts, empires, and ambitions. A land that would one day forge the greatest empire the ancient world had ever seen. This is where our story begins. And as you hear it, remember this: the Persian Empire did not simply rise. It erupted. The first spark was not an army. It was a child. A child with a name that would echo through thousands of years. Cyrus. Cyrus the son of Cambyses. Cyrus of Anshan. Cyrus who would become known as the father of his people. Cyrus the Great. But before Cyrus, Persia was a land of tribes. Scattered. Independent. Often overshadowed by the might of the Medes, their powerful neighbors. The Persians, living in the rugged Fars region, were skilled horsemen, farmers, survivors, yet they were not rulers of anything beyond their valleys. No temples of gold. No mighty fortresses. No chiseled monuments. Just ordinary people in a harsh land waiting for someone extraordinary. The Medes dominated them. They demanded loyalty, tribute, obedience. And for generations, Persia bent its knee. Until, in one quiet moment of history, a young prince named Cyrus realized that his people were not destined to kneel forever. Imagine the scene. A small hill settlement. Smoke rising from clay ovens. Persian elders discussing the future. And Cyrus, observing everything, listening closely, waiting, gathering the early threads of ambition that would one day become an empire. Working beside him were the people who would remain consistent through his life: Harpagus the Mede, a man with a tragic past and a fierce loyalty; Mandana, the wise and protective mother of Cyrus; and General Artapherne, one of the earliest Persian warriors who shaped young Cyrus into both strategist and leader. These characters will stay with us as long as Cyrus does. Their faces, their clothing, their voices, all consistent, because this documentary is not about shifting shadows but about real people who shaped real history. In a quiet Persian courtyard, Artapherne trained Cyrus with wooden spears. Mandana taught him diplomacy, patience, clarity. Harpagus, once a loyal general of the Median king, watched silently, his mind heavy with secrets he dared not speak. He had suffered greatly under King Astyages, the ruler of the Medes, and he carried that pain like a hidden fire. That fire would soon fuel something much greater. The Persians believed in the power of truth. The concept of Asha. Order. Righteousness. And Cyrus learned it well. He did not dream of ruling the world. He dreamed of protecting his people from the weight of others. And the world would soon discover that such dreams can reshape nations. The turning point came when Astyages, the Median king, grew paranoid. He heard prophecies, visions, dreams of a Persian child rising to overthrow him. He tried to stop it. He failed. He tried to silence it. He failed. He tried to control it. That failed too. Because fate was no longer in the hands of a king. It had moved quietly into the hands of Cyrus. In the shadows of the Median court, Harpagus plotted in silence. Every day he watched Astyages ruling with cruelty. Every day he remembered the horrors he had suffered so many years earlier. And when he learned of Cyrus, the Persian prince who could change everything, Harpagus made the most dangerous decision of his life. He chose to shift history. He sent secret letters to Persian nobles. He whispered messages through trusted writers. He carried a single idea across mountains and deserts: the Medes could fall, and the Persians believed it. The moment Cyrus declared rebellion, the world did not tremble immediately. But the earth shifted. Armies mobilized. Riders galloped. Messages burned through Persia like fire through dry grass. Astyages sent his general to crush the rebellion. But that general was Harpagus himself. And in one moment of destiny, Harpagus betrayed the Mede army and turned his soldiers toward Cyrus. When the two forces met on the battlefield, the Medes expected loyalty. Instead, they were surrounded by former allies who now stood with the Persians. That day, the balance of the ancient world shattered. Cyrus captured Ecbatana, the Median capital, without looting the city. Without burning it. Without destroying its people. Instead, he did something revolutionary. He united the Medes and the Persians, treating both as equals. This moment laid the foundation of something larger than a kingdom. Something larger than a federation. An empire. Cyrus was no longer a rebel prince. He was now ruler of a vast domain stretching across mountains, rivers, plains, and ancient cities. And every step forward would transform him from a regional king into a world leader. Yet the rise of Persia did not stop there. With Harpagus at his side, with Mandana guiding him, with Artaphron training and commanding the armies, Cyrus marched toward the greatest challenge yet, Lydia, ruled by King Croesus. A man famed for his wealth. His gold. His divine fortune. Croesus believed that no army could defeat him. He believed he could crush Persia. And when Cyrus heard of Croesus' intentions, he did not hesitate. He prepared his soldiers, strengthened his cavalry, gathered supplies, consulted seers, and marched west toward a confrontation that would decide the fate of two civilizations. As Cyrus approached the Lydian border, he paused with Artaphron at a high ridge. Below them, the road led through forests, rivers, and fortified Lydian settlements. Artaphron looked at the horizon with determination. Cyrus looked at it with destiny. Harpagus looked with strategy. Every great empire begins with a single decision. And Cyrus made his that day. He continued forward. The world was about to witness a war unlike anything it had seen before. The air grew colder as Cyrus and his army marched west toward Lydia. The land changed. The soil grew darker, the forests thicker, and the rivers stronger. The Lydians were skilled fighters, experienced in cavalry warfare and equipped with heavy armor. Their king, Croesus, believed he could predict destiny because every oracle he consulted told him he was favored by the gods. Yet even as he prepared his defenses, he underestimated one truth: Cyrus was not merely expanding a kingdom. He was shaping the ancient world into something it had never been. Cyrus paused at the Halys River, its waters rushing powerfully between rocky banks. Artaphron rode up beside him, quiet, steady, observing the flow with the eyes of a seasoned warrior. Harpagus studied the terrain behind them, calculating distances, routes, and the timing of the Lydian response. Croesus believed the river would stop Cyrus. But rivers only stop those who fear crossing. Under Cyrus' command, Persian engineers and soldiers built a temporary diversion, redirecting the flow long enough to lower the water and allow the army to cross. This moment, simple, practical, was a sign of what the Persian Empire would become. Not just powerful. Innovative. Adaptable. Unstoppable. When Cyrus reached the outskirts of Sardis, the Lydian capital, he saw something no Persian had ever seen before: a city of gleaming stone walls, towering palaces, gold markets, and luxurious villas resting high upon a steep fortified hill. Sardis was the jewel of Anatolia. And Croesus stood atop its walls confident, armored in gold and bronze, believing victory was already his. But war does not bend to belief. It bends to wisdom. The first clash happened in the plains of Tyria. The Lydian cavalry charged with thunderous speed, shaking the earth beneath their horses. Their heavy armor glistened as they roared toward the Persian lines. Cyrus stood watching from a ridge, calm, steady, his cloak rising with the wind. Artaphron commanded the front ranks, directing shield-bearers to tighten formation. Harpagus guided the flanks, waiting for the Lydians to overextend. When the charge hit, it was fierce. Shields cracked. Spears splintered. Dust erupted in violent clouds. But the Persians held. And when Croesus ordered another wave, Cyrus unleashed something unexpected: camels. Not war camels trained for battle, but supply camels repurposed in the moment. Their scent terrified the Lydian horses, causing confusion among the riders. It was a simple tactic. Brilliant. effective. And it shattered Croesus' confidence. The battle ended without a true victor, but Croesus retreated believing Cyrus would need months to recover. Cyrus did not. While Croesus returned to Sardis to gather allies, Cyrus continued marching. He arrived at Sardis before Croesus was ready, catching the kingdom off guard. The siege began. Persian archers filled the sky with arrows. Lydian defenders hurled stones, fire, and spears. The walls were high, nearly impossible to scale. Days turned to weeks, and Sardis held strong. Croesus believed the city was invincible. Cyrus believed no wall was too high for a man willing to climb it. On a quiet morning, a Persian soldier named Hieroedes noticed something. As he watched the ridge behind Sardis, he saw a Lydian guard accidentally drop his helmet over the cliff. Moments later, the guard climbed down a hidden narrow path in the cliff face to retrieve it. Hieroedes realized what no one else had seen. One side of Sardis's fortress was so steep the Lydians assumed no enemy would attempt to scale it. So they left it nearly unguarded. That night, Cyrus sent a small, elite group of climbers led by Artapherne. They ascended the cliff silently, gripping the rock with bare hands. For hours they climbed, their breaths shallow, their hearts steady. When they reached the top, the guards were asleep. The Persians opened the gate from within. By sunrise, Sardis had fallen. Croesus, defeated, was brought before Cyrus. Most kings of that era would have executed their enemy. But Cyrus was not most kings. He spared Croesus, honored him, and treated him with dignity. This mercy would become a hallmark of the Persian Empire. With Lydia under Persian control, Cyrus had become ruler of a vast domain from the Iranian plateau to the Mediterranean shores. Yet his ambition was not cruelty nor conquest for glory. It was unity, stability, order, harmony between people who had always been enemies. While Cyrus reshaped the West, he prepared for another monumental journey, eastward, toward the lands of Central Asia. But before those campaigns began, he returned to Pars, where Mandana waited. Her wisdom guided him through each decision, grounding him, reminding him of the values that would eventually define the empire: justice, tolerance, and respect for the cultures he absorbed. The empire expanded further. Harpagus led armies north, subduing rebellious tribes with strategy, not savagery. Artapherne strengthened the Persian cavalry, transforming it into one of the finest forces of the ancient world. Together they built a military machine guided not by fear but by discipline and loyalty. Time passed. The Persian Empire grew. And then came the most important conquest of all. The beating heart of the ancient world. Babylon. Babylon was unlike any city Cyrus had faced before. Towers that touched the clouds. Gates of glazed blue. Walls so massive they were said to be impenetrable. Babylon was the jewel of Mesopotamia, ruled by Nabonidus, a king estranged from his own people. His son Belshazzar commanded the city in his absence, ruling with arrogance and indifference. As Cyrus approached Babylon, he understood that he was not fighting a kingdom. He was confronting a civilization older than any other. A center of science, religion, art, and law. A place where the ancient world gathered its knowledge like grains of sand. But Babylon was ready. Its gates were closed. Its walls fortified. Its granaries full of food that could last years. The city seemed invincible, yet cities do not fall from walls. They fall from within. Cyrus sent spies and envoys to learn the mood of Babylon. And he discovered that many of its people were tired of Nabonidus's religious reforms. Tired of heavy labor. Tired of arrogance. They feared Cyrus less than they feared their own king. As the Persians camped near the Euphrates River, Cyrus formed a plan. A plan so daring, so subtle, that historians still speak of it with awe. He did not attack the walls. He attacked the water. His engineers diverted the Euphrates just enough to lower the river's depth beneath Babylon's gates. On a moonless night, Persian soldiers waded through the lowered riverbed, slipping quietly beneath the walls. Harpagus led one group on the western gate. Artapherne led another on the eastern passage. The Babylonians were celebrating a festival, unaware that their city was being taken without a single violent breach. By dawn, Babylon belonged to Cyrus, and what he did next changed the world. He freed the enslaved people. He restored temples. He honored Babylonian gods. He allowed exiled communities, including the Jews, to return to their homelands. He wrote his principles into clay, the Cyrus cylinder. A declaration of human rights far ahead of its time. The Persian Empire was no longer just a power. It was an idea, and Cyrus became more than a conqueror. He became a symbol of justice, but every story of rise must one day face the horizon of its end. Cyrus, now older, marched east toward the tribes of Central Asia. Artaphron still commanded his armies. Harpagus provided counsel, strategy, and warnings. Mandana, though aging, remained his spiritual anchor. The years had transformed them all, yet their loyalty remained unbroken. As Cyrus rode through the harsh eastern plains, he spoke little. His eyes carried the weight of an empire stretching from the Aegean Sea to the mountains of Afghanistan. No king had ever ruled this much land with this much grace, but destiny is harsh. And in the cold steppes beyond Persia, a conflict awaited that would test Cyrus more than any kingdom before. The story of Persia was rising higher than ever, but darkness was forming on the horizon. The final chapter of Cyrus's life was approaching, and the world would never forget how it ended. The winter winds of the eastern frontier cut sharper than any sword Cyrus had ever known. The land stretched endlessly, a harsh plain of frost, wild rivers, and unforgiving mountains. These were lands of tribes who had never bowed to any king. Fierce warriors. Horse archers who rode like shadows across the grasslands. Among them were the Massagetæ, led by their queen, Thamyris. Cyrus approached this frontier with the same clarity he brought to every campaign. Harpagus advised caution, reminding him that these tribes fought like no enemy Persia had ever faced. Artaphron strengthened the cavalry formations, drilling soldiers each morning beneath the pale sun. Mandana, though aging, warned him from afar through letters that these lands did not behave like kingdoms, they behaved like storms. You do not conquer a storm. You survive it. Still, Cyrus pressed onward. His purpose was not conquest for glory, nor revenge, nor ambition. It was security. The eastern frontier had to be stabilized so Persia could endure. An empire so vast demanded protection in all directions. The conflict with Thamyris began not with battle, but with a misunderstanding born of distrust. Cyrus offered marriage as a symbol of unity. Thamyris interpreted this not as an alliance, but as a trap. She refused. And when Cyrus advanced deeper into her territory, the storm Mandana warned of finally broke. The first clash was brutal. Arrow storms blackened the sky. Massagetæ warriors moved like lightning, releasing volleys while galloping at impossible speed. Persian infantry held firm, but the nomads did not fight in lines. They attacked, retreated, circled, vanished. Harpagus ordered strategic withdrawals. Artaphron directed the cavalry to counter their flanks. The Persians adapted with discipline, but the Massagetæ had home advantage, terrain familiarity, and ferocity unmatched by any Western kingdom. Cyrus made a tactical decision. He created a decoy camp filled with supplies, food, and wine. When a Massagetæ detachment found it, they feasted. Many drank heavily, unfamiliar with the strength of Persian wine. Then Cyrus struck. It was a victory, but at a terrible cost. Thamyris' son, Spargapises, was among the captured. When he awakened and realized his situation, he took his own life. And with that, peace became impossible. Thamyris vowed vengeance. The next battle would not be strategic. It would be final. Cyrus prepared his men. Artaphron sharpened the ranks. Harpagus studied every movement of the enemy, every hill, every possible ambush. But the Massagetæ advanced not with hidden tactics this time, but with overwhelming force. Tens of thousands. Wave after wave. Warriors with painted faces. Archers on horseback. Spears flashing. Drums echoing across the cold plains, the battle lasted all day. Cyrus fought on the front lines, sword in hand, cloak torn by arrows, shield splintered. Artaphron rallied the cavalry again and again. Harpagus directed the archers, maintaining discipline under impossible pressure. The Persians did not break. Even surrounded, even exhausted, they held their formations in perfect unity, but the Massagetæ fought with the fury of a grieving nation. As the sun began to sink, Cyrus found himself in the heart of the storm. His soldiers formed a shield ring around him. Artaphron rode forward, cutting through enemies to reach his king. Harpagus shouted orders with a voice worn from years of battle. But the tide had turned. The Persians were being pushed further into the plains, their lines thinning, their shields cracking. Cyrus refused to retreat. He fought until the final moment, surrounded by loyal soldiers who defended him with their last breath. History records his death differently in various sources, but one truth remains constant: Cyrus died as he lived. At the front. With courage. With honor. With the loyalty of his people surrounding him. When news reached Persia, Mandana collapsed in tears. Harpagus returned carrying the weight of failure he could never forgive himself for. Artaphron walked in silence beside him, wounded, grieving, but determined to protect the empire Cyrus built. The world shook, and yet, the empire did not fall. Cyrus's son, Cambyses, ascended the throne. Under him, Persia expanded into Egypt. After Cambyses, chaos tried to swallow the empire, but Darius, a distant relative of the royal line, restored order and reshaped the empire into something even greater. Under Darius, the empire gained its administrative brilliance: satrapies, royal roads, postal systems, taxation, law, and the magnificent capital of Persepolis. Artaphron continued serving under the next kings, training generals, shaping strategy, ensuring the empire Cyrus founded did not collapse from within. Harpagus, older now, became an advisor whose knowledge of foreign lands helped Persia maintain stability across thousands of miles. Cyrus remained the heartbeat of the empire. His legacy shaped every king who followed. Under Xerxes, Persia reached its greatest military height, crossing into Greece with an army that shook the world. Under Artaxerxes, diplomacy flourished. Under Darius II and beyond, Persia remained a superpower for centuries, an empire of tolerance, cultures, languages, and incredible wealth. But everything started with one man: Cyrus, the child who survived a prophecy, the rebel who united tribes, the general who conquered kingdoms, the king who freed nations, the ruler who wrote human rights into clay. The Persian Empire became the largest the world had ever seen, stretching from the Aegean Sea to the Indus Valley, from Egypt to Central Asia. An empire built not on destruction, but on unity. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. Greece, Rome, Byzantium, the Caliphates, the Ottomans, each left their mark. But the story of Persia remained carved in stone, written in cuneiform, preserved by historians, and remembered by millions. Today, when we speak of ancient civilization, when we discuss human rights, governance, diplomacy, culture, architecture, or tolerance, the ideas seeded by Cyrus still echo, and somewhere, in the winds of Iran, in the silent ruins of Pasargadae, in the stone reliefs of Persepolis, the spirit of that first empire still breathes, not as ruins, not as relics, but as a reminder. That power built with justice endures beyond kings, beyond centuries, beyond time. This was the story of the Persian Empire, and its legacy.